Good evening, everyone, and welcome to YarninBlak. I'm your guest host, Darcy McGauley-Bartlett, a proud Ganyi man and Aboriginal health practitioner by trade, joined by the host and now my guest, AJ Williams.
Hi, Darcy. How are you?
Yeah, good, my brother. Now we've come together for a very special occasion today. I'm as the guest host here with AJ to celebrate 21 years of Girraway Ganyi, and AJ will, if I got it wrong, will correct me. Ganyi, my apologies. Consulting, which AJ has touched many of people across Australia, but also across Victoria, and I've got some questions for AJ that I was starting to ask by Facebook, but I thought, why not bring it together and celebrate this as a momentous moment and really get AJ's name on the record and get everything out there so he's able to tell his story about his passion for the work that he's done and the amazing lives that he's changed. So I reckon we should get straight into the questions, brother. I reckon that's the best way to go about it.
Sure.
So my first question is why and when did you start your business?
Okay. I started my business in about 2005, and that was trading under Girraway Ganyi. I wasn't a company until 2015, but for the first 10 years I was doing private, sole trader. And it really started with, I was doing a job at the museum in the city, and I was working 3 days a week, but had 2 days where I wasn't working, and I wanted to start to increase. What I found was that there wasn't a lot of Aboriginal consultants out there delivering cultural awareness training, and two, I was trying to increase the awareness of what it's like to be an Aboriginal worker in an organisation that didn't actually have much support. And colleagues keep asking you questions. It's what we call cultural load now, but didn't really have a name in 2005. So it was about increasing the awareness in the workplace. 2000, and I was working part-time in a number of jobs. So over the next year or two, I was just really looking at workplaces. But in 2008, I had just left an organisation called Care Connect, and I was working at the Indigenous gathering place in the western suburbs. And it was interesting because it was one of the first Aboriginal services that I worked at, because I've always worked in either government or in private organisations. And my job was bridging hack. So it was about getting hack home and community care services engaged with the gathering place, and having conversations with each of the 32 different organisations that existed in the western suburbs at the time. Not one of them had actually had any Aboriginal cultural awareness at all. And I worked part-time. I only worked 3 days a week, and I went to the CEO of the gathering place and said, are we able to provide cultural awareness? And the CEO said, no, we're not part of our brief. And then I went and asked and wrote to the board going, I've got 4 other days of the week, including the weekends, where I would like to be able to provide cultural awareness to these hack providers. Would the board see this as a conflict of interest if I did this through my own business? And the board actually went, no, you're employed clearly to provide a bridging between the hack services and the gathering place. So what you do on the other 4 days of the week is your business. And that meant that I could then create significant programs to work with Aboriginal people, mainly in health settings, which were home and community care, and my background being a nurse, youth worker and a social worker. So I predominantly started off in the community health services, hospitals, and where health environments were, predominantly in the western suburbs for the first maybe 4 or 5 years of putting training together.
It's interesting, Bros, particularly around the western suburbs, because it always is a bit of congestion when it comes to West Metro and also the Metro and the circle, as they talk about. I can't remember what they call it, but basically that everything stops from Melbourne as it goes up. And I think we've definitely seen development over, particularly not only with your organisation, but over all of the organisations across the board is that you're slowly starting to see that bridge of Melbourne, that it's reaching out, and it's, services are actually getting delivered across Victoria. I've seen a couple of ACCOs today announce new services that they've been delivering, which we were talking about back when I was training as a clinician as well. So it's really interesting to see the work that you've done previously in the Western Suburbs and where we are now as well. I suppose you offer a variety of workshops and consultancy services and trainings and lots of other different things, mentoring as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the beginnings of some of these. So I really want to touch particularly on starting with reconciliation action plans, and then your mental health first aid training, and then I want to go into your cultural awareness. But then there's one more I want to touch on, but that's a little bit later.
Oh, okay. Surprise at the end.
Yeah, that's it, always.
So which was the first one? Reconciliation.
So you talked to us about reconciliation action plans and cultural safety.
Well, the interesting thing was I was working at Victoria University at the time. I worked there from 1999 to 2005, and I worked in a number of jobs, including student careers. And the workplace employed us, or the workplace did employ us, obviously, but they got us to do a graduate diploma in career education that the university paid for, and one of the subjects was career planning, and our assignment was to actually apply for a dream job that you wanted, not get it, and then write down what I need to be able to do in terms of being able to get into the job. And so that was my project. So I actually applied for a job in Indigenous employment at the Museum Victoria, and I actually went to the interview planning on not getting the job, and they offered me the job. And I went, oh shit, I wasn't planning on accepting it. So I went back to my manager, who said, look, AJ, I'm in charge of careers, and what would you say to a student who came to you right now saying they got the job? And I said, I'd probably tell them to take it. And she goes, yeah, I want you to take it because this is where you want to be. And that job was to actually help establish their first reconciliation plan. And not a lot of organisations had reconciliation action plans as early as 2005, if that makes sense. Yep. So it was quite a new kind of thing, but bigger organisations had them and universities had them, but organisations and government and the museum as part of government didn't really actually have the strategies in place. So my job there was to actually create a Indigenous employment strategy, and that meant that I actually went out and I spoke to so many organisations who had done reconciliation action plans about how do we actually start this, how do we actually put it together, who should we consult, who should we not consult. And it was a 6-month project that I did, and that was to put together Indigenous employment strategy. Now that role was only for 6 months, and it was part-time, and I finished that project. And I think the thing that I actually always asked the museum is that the skills that I've learned here, do you mind if I take some of those skills, not necessarily take the plan and redo it, but I'm thinking that I'm already delivering cultural awareness training I'm already delivering cultural awareness training. Maybe I can start offering people how to actually do reconciliation action plans, but not just how to do the document, but how they as an organisation go about putting an action plan together, with or without a consultant, if that makes sense. So if they want me as a consultant, that's fine, but if they want to get someone else as a consultant, that's fine, but you're paying me at the moment to explain to you the process of how to actually ethically put a reconciliation action plan into place. Yeah. So over the next 4 or 5 years, I worked with a number of organisations in order for them to create some of their first reconciliation action plans, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
And some of them involved me as the consultant working with them. Some of them I said to them, look, and this is where I tried to stay in my own little bit of a laneway. I've been a person that go, because you're Aboriginal doesn't mean that you know it all, one, about Aboriginal issues, but I don't know, my background's health, education, employment, and often that's the laneways that I stay in when I do cultural awareness training and take on jobs, because I know that area. Yeah. And so some organisations were coming to me going, that were way out there, and some of them, look, I'd like to learn more, so I took them on, and some I'm going, I don't think I'm the right consultant to work with you on developing it, but or actually putting the plan together or implementing it. I will link you with somebody that can do that bit, but my job's to actually help you create a framework where the RAP can actually sit within it. And sometimes it was the building blocks before the RAP, if that makes sense. And so when the RAP consultant comes along, they can feel culturally safe in an environment where things aren't debated with them. You can have those debates and stuff with me being a consultant, but when we're trying to get the person in to actually help you with the reconciliation action plan, this is the way that you should be going with it. And so I did that for probably about 6 or 7 years, and then now I'm still working with organisations in different capacities with reconciliation action plans. Some I'm involved in the whole construction of them. Some I'm sitting just as a member on their RAP committee, and others we're looking at maybe the Reconciliation Australia RAP structure doesn't really fit their organisation, and re-looking at possibly doing reconciliation strategies or healing strategies, or looking at ways to do things in a creative way that matches their workplace, not tries to make their workplace match a template document.
It's interesting you say that, brother, and I just want to pick up a key point, because for a very long time I was obviously working in prevention, and for as long as I have in my career, is I was sort of at the point in my career where I thought, we're past reconciliation action plans. We need to look at strategies and strategic plans and accountability. I think it was probably after the referendum I went, we need to go back to reconciliation action plans. We actually need to start back at the start, and not making, obviously, your organisation fit into a box, but how can your organisation work with the community to create a self-determined approach of how, 1, reconciliation, 2, self-determination, 3, outcomes. And there's a bit of intellectual property that I've just given for free for some of our viewers, but I think as well, brother, so you've done significant work around reconciliation action plans. Let's also talk about your cultural awareness training. So you're doing that, I suppose. People don't realise the cultural awareness you're giving also whilst you're doing the RAPs as well. So if you want to walk through the cultural awareness training, that'd be great as well, brother.
I think the best way of explaining it is that while I was at the museum, I'll go back to the museum because this was my pivotal point, and getting permission, because I only worked there 3 days a week, I still had 2 days a week of work I could do, and I actually was going, I would like to be able to deliver cultural awareness as part of my work here at the museum, or set up a cultural awareness program for the museum to deliver, but also like to create my own as well. And so I sat down with people like Arnie Dye, the Wurundjeri Lands Council, and actually went, this is what I want to deliver for myself, and this is what I want to deliver for my workplace, and I want them to be very separate and very different, and I want them to be stuff that I've created but in consultation with relevant people. And I think the great thing is that working with the Wurundjeri Land Councils and people like Arnie Dye Kerr and Arnie Doreen Garvey, and it was sitting down and actually going, well, what things are you going to be talking about in your private consultancy, and things that I shouldn't be talking about. So the Wurundjeri Land Council mob were going, we don't want you to talk about country. That's our job. Yeah. And I said, I've been to a number of cultural awareness trainings, and look, ethically, I'm a person that follows real ethics. So I went and saw people delivering cultural awareness that were out there. Ron Murray, for example, Karen Millwood at the time, Koori Heritage Trust. And before I even went, I said, I would like to be able to deliver cultural awareness, but I don't even know where to start or what it should look like. Would you be happy for me to sit in and watch, if that makes sense? I wasn't there to steal ideas. I was there to actually just observe what things people do talk about, and I was trying to find the things that were similar but the things that were different, because I wanted to work on the difference, not the similar.
Well, what's missing, and this is the thing, as we talk, you and I, particularly around people that fall through the gaps. Well, what are the gaps that we're seeing in the training? And I think from an academic and a research perspective, that makes sense.
Yes.
I think, when you go, that's not, you're going there to learn. It's been, look, to be full disclosure, it's been a while since I've gone to a cultural awareness training or a cultural safety training. Actually, it hasn't been that long. It's been about 4 years since I've gone to one, but I've delivered some trauma-informed care training as well, and that's around our mob, but it's also trauma-informed care. So, don't be stupid. You're dealing with people with, an illness. We need to act in the appropriate way. So, I think you definitely did. I think the right thing is you've gone and you found the base. And right, well, where are the gaps can I fill? Because that's the knowledge that's being missed. And you've done it with people like the AA.
Okay. So I'll just go back a little bit. I think what I want to add too is that the thing that was missing the most from a lot of the cultural awareness trainings I was seeing at the time was the practical skill component of, if an Aboriginal person was sitting in front of you, what changes? Because what I was seeing at all the trainings was this historic dates and this occurred in this year and this is what occurred, and this is why Aboriginal people have high risk rates of all these diseases, and it was just kind of left there. And I was going, well, so what's the practical things that you need to know if I had an Aboriginal patient and client sitting right in front of me? So my workshops have always been 50% on talking about history, but 50% about talking about the practical skills that you will need. And the one thing that my training also does is makes history so recent, because my story is told and interwoven from the first moment I introduce myself to the end of the training. While I'm explaining everything else, I'm weaving my story through, where people don't know my story actually go, holy shit, this stuff's much more recent than where we actually placed it in history. And I go, yes, and I could be your trainer, I could be your staff member, I could be your colleague, I could be your client or your patient, and this is stuff that's happened to me in my lifetime that you probably had no idea, because you came here thinking I was just the trainer. And most people go, holy shit, I didn't realize how recent in history this stuff really was. And that's been my uniqueness.
But that shows the value of lived experience as well. And I think that's probably goes to that point of cultural awareness training and even cultural safety, and even like utilising VACA's cultural competence continuum. The framework and the continuum. Like, I've always got it up here. Now, and the reason I say that is because, like, for example, in my workplaces where I've gone, is that people, you're the Aboriginal employee, you're a young fella. It's like, if you've walked a mile in my shoes as an Aboriginal person or in my life, you'd think very differently in the engagement and the approach, and why the approach people take. And I think one thing that really helped with your training, I know from that was given to some of my staff many moons ago at the Department of Justice, but then also even at other workplaces. You're still delivering now, exactly. But even at Victoria Police as well, you were able to basically explain without actually using the words of, treat your Aboriginal staff like any other person, but understand their lived experience is valuable, and you're not going to get in the door without it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing for me. And I think even from learning from you such a long time, is that lived experience is valued by most, not by all. And I think that with your training and seeing what you've done over the years, particularly around your cultural safety training, and which we'll talk about in a second, is your mental health first aid training. Is not only is your lived experience woven in between there, but it's the shared lived experience of other people. And we've spoken about vicarious trauma many times, but you're able to provide an environment, and I'm probably biased here, but I find in your mental health first aid training that you provide is that you provide an environment that is free from vicarious trauma.
I try to, yeah.
Yeah, and like I've been to many of your mental health first aids course to get requalified, and I can definitely say your delivery changes in the content as it goes on, because obviously things happen and updates, but the way the content you deliver is different, but the way you deliver is so consistent, and it's perfect. It's what people need. It's that trauma-informed care approach I find that you deliver, brother, and it's obviously came from not only your years of lived experience, years and years, years and years of lived experience, but it is that whole learning as you go as well. So you've gone from learning from an academic base, but also learning from, right, how do we get started? Who do I need to talk to? So how did you fall into or get into mental health first aid training?
Oh, this was 2008, so I'd already been delivering cultural awareness training, and I was actually working in another organisation called Care Connect, and just before I went to the gathering place, actually, so a position got advertised. VATCHO was giving out scholarships for Aboriginal people to do mental health first aid, and I put my hand up and said, I'd like to be able to do it. And so I went and did the 5-day training, and I then started delivering it. And again, I went back to the service providers that I'd already used before and said, hey, I'm not just delivering cultural awareness training, I also deliver mental health first aid training. And I just started rolling it out, and I've now, 17 years later, I just got my certificate, the longest serving instructor from mental health first aid, and just delivered my 917th course to over 10,400 people.
10,400 people's lives that you have impacted, AJ. Like, that's just with mental health first aid training. Imagine everything else, from your nursing, your youth work, your social worker. This is what when we talk about Australians making a real difference, this is it. This is it, AJ. And so I'll get back to that. So you've been your longest serving trainer. You've went and did your course. You're working at Care Connect, and then you were delivering these trainings. So.
And my business got so big because people wanted me more than I could fit in those 2 days, because I always worked in 3-day-a-week jobs and did my business 2 days. So I then ended up quitting my job, and I actually went to the gathering place again, and I did the cultural awareness, as I mentioned before. Yeah. And then slowly I was decreasing my hours where I could actually set up a business that was 4 days a week. And then for a little while it got too big for me, and I went, oh no, I really need something more stable. And I went to Mental Health First Aid Australia to become their program manager, and I started there 4 days a week, dropped it down to 3 days a week, went to 2 days a week because my business was just getting so big. And then I had to leave Mental Health First Aid Australia in 2015 purely for two reasons. One, I was bullied out a little bit by community and lateral violence, which we've spoken about before on a different podcast series, but because my business was taking over most of my time. So from 2016 till today, 10 years, I work on my business about 6 days a week.
And that's the thing. I don't think people understand the toll that when you're running your own business, it's like truck drivers. If the wheels aren't turning, you aren't making the money, and you don't get paid unless you deliver a result. So I think that's the thing people don't understand, and it's a huge plunge to take into running your own business, delivering training. One thing that I know that we've talked about on even YarninBlak, but we've spoken about on our podcast that we host together, No Shame, Just Truth, is that we've talked about that moment, that pivotal point where you go, I'm burnt out. And I think that you've been able to identify that and go and work for an organisation or a business to be able to re-stabilise to then come back straight into it. And I think, for young people, AJ, you've been really able to, I suppose, and from what I can hear and what I've heard is you've been able to be a role model, but all your training is self-determined. You've spoken with land councils, and that's how I'm sort of weaving in here, because when you first developed your training, you spoke to traditional owner groups, you spoke to organisations to be able, like the College of Midwives, RACGP, elders, and actual people that, I'm happy for you to name as well. But I think it's really important that you've always had the support of community as well. Now, lateral violence is going to be here, and people are always going to have something to say. My thoughts are, and similar to yours, is at least they're talking about me, not somebody else. And obviously, that at least we occupy that little bit of that mind. And isn't it wasted? Because we're both really boring people, aren't we? Oh, well, you're not. You get to travel the world and go to the theatre. I'm boring. I have kids. I have horses. That's all I'm still trying to ride horses with a broken back, and that's going fantastic at the moment. Just saying, AJ. But listening to from the start, just before self-determination had a name. That's what you were doing.
Yeah, I wanted, and I think that and the funny thing is, like, when I spoke to a lot of the TOs, they go, "You don't need our permission to deliver training." But what you've done is you've followed some sort of cultural protocol in talking to us about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. And we will support you doing this. And what people, if you come to my cultural awareness training, most times there's a video from one of the TOs that I use at the beginning that welcomes people to country and clearly states in the video, we support AJ doing this work on this land, and we endorse this, and they don't say they give me permission, we endorse the work that he does. And it's people like AJ that makes these conversations actually occur, and our support is with him. That is my introduction, because the TOs have listened to me, but I've also listened to them.
And that's the important part, isn't it? It's the dual listening. It's that open listening, and that's that caring. And I think, AJ, looking at, you've delivered so many sessions. Probably now, looking at your career history, I don't know where you got the time. But to think, even 2005, when you started the organisation, I was in grade 1. I was in grade 1. I met you when I was 15, 16, and you changed my whole career trajectory in 6 hours, 8 hours. Because I'm not counting the time after that we spent at the pub, and I had to drink lemonade because I wasn't old enough.
You weren't old enough.
I wasn't old enough. But in saying that, though, is that you changed my trajectory to where I am today. And I think that's the really important part, is the TOs not only endorsing the work that you've done, but you have followed cultural protocol. And I think that's one thing that and I don't usually like to talk about government departments because of my previous affiliation, but I'd like to say that one thing I really do like about particularly the Department of Justice is local, regional and state voices that aren't just organisations. So they are community elected people, and same with First Peoples Assembly. Like, they are community elected people. They have the endorsement and the backing of our community, and I love that, and that's what it should be. And that's my own opinion, is that, your work has been done and supported in self-determination. Then we've got the First Peoples Assembly and, your large acts, your large acts, like, they get the voices rallying around to deliver up. And I think it's important, AJ, because you were doing this stuff before these other organisations were doing it. Justice, not so much. I think they've been doing it for about 30 odd years, but in a very different way. And I'm moving from that, though. You were at the gathering places, and you were working with all these other organisations, and you mentioned some work with, like, did the VATCHO scholarship. So
yes, so I did the VATCHO scholarship, which was then being able to train in mental health first aid. I became an Aboriginal instructor first, and my first job I delivered to my own staff at Care Connect, and my second one was at Dandenong Vaka, that Arnie Dye and Leanne Sumner and a number of people came to. And the third one was a community event that I think I held again at I think it was Swinburne College down in Lilydale, that had community members at, who actually went, oh my God, I wish we had these discussions in mob, because we don't actually have these discussions. And that's going back 2008, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I what I loved about the trainings were people didn't know what they didn't know, to start off with, one, and two, people said they didn't feel safe in having conversations because they didn't know what they couldn't talk about. And I was saying, you can talk about anything, but you've got to be able to put it in a way that if I'm well, I can understand everything that you're saying. But if I'm unwell, my thoughts and feelings are in different places. You may need to tailor what you say in ways for me to actually understand, because at the moment I'm unwell. And people go, that is so powerful, because we don't try to adapt sometimes the way that we actually talk to understanding how the person may interpret stuff.
It's interesting, brother, because I even and I'm happy to say on YarninBlak is that the amount of times where I've come to you as a mentor, as a brother, for that advice as well, to go, you don't know what you don't know. And I remember coming to you, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks post my back operation, going, something's going on. You're going through opioid withdrawal, you idiot. That's the stuff that you need, though. The way you deal with one patient is very different than you deal with another patient or a friend or a colleague. And it's interesting, because, for example, I'd say the same thing to you, that we'd both go, if it was to a patient, be like, what you're actually experiencing now is this. And one thing that I've learned through your mental health first aid training, so going back to that, is one thing you said to me at 16, don't have the conversation if you're not ready for the response.
Yeah.
Because it's really important, because if you start that conversation and this person decides that they want to disclose that they have those ideation, idolizing those thoughts, or don't know what to do.
Suicidal ideation,
yeah, suicidal ideations. Is that if you don't know how to respond to that and what to do next, don't do it.
Yeah, get someone else to do it. Get someone else to have the conversation.
Don't just leave the conversation. Get somebody else in to help you. Would you like me to get you some help? What would you like me to do? Don't just leave the conversation and walk away. But I think it's really important, AJ, and we talk about this, you and I, quite regularly, is that both of us have had our lived experience with self-harm or self-injury, and or we're dealing with people with self-harm and self-injury, and it's a really hard thing to learn about but talk about. And I think with your course specifically, even talking about suicidal ideations and or self-harming, is how to help those people experiencing that. And people do it in very different ways. And I think, AJ, there's a lot of people I know personally, your training session has saved their lives. And I'm not just saying that because because I'm your guest host, but there's actual facts for it. If I did an academic study, I can promise you right now that you have saved many lives, particularly some boys at Scotch College, but also our young yarn and fellas that we yarn with quite regularly now.
Yeah.
But that leading into that, though, I really want to know what are some challenges you had in your business, really wanting to sort of narrow in on lateral violence and being accused of, stealing other people's work or stealing, presenting work that's not yours, because it no doubt happens all the bloody time.
Yeah.
But let's talk about lateral violence, because they coincide, I find.
They do. Look, I think the more bigger that you become, the more I'm seen in the public. Yes, I've won some awards from some universities. I've won some awards through NAIDOC events and community. And I don't see the awards just in my name. It's about getting my platform out there. I've always said that. The problem is people look at it and they want to push you down. And I've had people steal my work. I've had people go on my Facebook accounts and my LinkedIn accounts and look at clients that I've been to and ring them directly. And I know that because the clients rang me directly and said, hey, have you heard of this consultant? They're trying to find out how much you earn, and we can undercut you. So I know that there's people out there that are not as ethical as me. I know that I try to support every single person that's ever started a business, or mental health first aid people that when they start mental health first aid often reach out and say, hey, if you need a hand, I'm always here. Most people take that on board, but there are some people that just go, well, stay away, he's out to try to take over my work. There's so much work out there. It's not a competition per se. There's so much work out there, but I am being drawn into conversations that I'm not a part of, where I'm viewed sometimes as this person who thinks he knows everything and thinks the whole world revolves around him, and that's far from the truth. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You know me.
I know you well enough that we'd love to put a statue of you in the centre of Melbourne, but we also know that you're humble enough not to accept it.
Probably not.
No, but you are right though, Bruz, and I think that's the other thing is, like, even as a young Aboriginal businessman myself, you were the first person I came to and said, look, what do I do? This is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. I want to achieve long term.
Yeah.
How do I get there, and what do I do? And it, like, my business direction is very separate and very different to what you deliver. Yeah. But you've been able to help steward and guide and educate and mentor me. And I think that people need to take that in, is that you've got no interest in pushing black businesses down. You want to elevate them. You want to bring them to the forefront of, black excellence, because that's what it is. And, we could name a number of businesses and people that are doing amazing work in the space as well. But I think that's the other thing, is that your name's, you said before, is your name's being brought into conversations, or people are trying to undercut you, and that's not how we work as community. But it's also not how we work in business. Business is we all know it's a cutthroat industry. Like, it's a very in your face, very dog eat dog world. But we as community don't work like that, and I don't want to speak on behalf of all community, but I know as community I don't work like that. And I think it frustrates me, AJ, around lateral violence always, and we've had this discussion before, but you've not won the awards for yourself. You've won them for you've won them because of the work that you've done. Somebody has nominated you. They're not all self-nominated, as much as we'd like to think they are. They're all not. You've done an amazing amount of work to achieve the results you've achieved. I would personally love to see you get an honorary doctorate at some point as well, because of the amount of work that you've done, because it's deserved. But again, coming back to your story and what's unique about your delivery, we've spoken about a little bit, is that you come with lived and living experience, and that's what I really want to push, is lived and living. Yes. You do this every single day. You've come with significant well, sorry, the best way to describe it is, you've gone down the river and there's two paths that you could have taken. So I would like you to talk to me, brother, so we talk about the unique parts of your workshops, but that pivotal moment of your lived experience where you decided, this is my career that I'm going to dedicate to changing the lives of people.
Well, I think I never made that choice to start off with. I came with a nursing director who gave me an opportunity, and I took it, because before that I didn't have anything else, and that moment changed my whole life, because otherwise I would have been on the streets, homeless. I made a decision to actually take up a nursing 3-year registered nursing training course, last ever hospital-based system in New South Wales, and I said, yes, I will do this. That matron changed my life. But I often want people to see me, and I think when I start my training, I go, this is AJ, this is who I am. I'm a nurse, youth worker, and a social worker. So I've given them a perception of me, and it's not until we get into the middle of the course somewhere that all of a sudden I'm starting to share a story and a number of stories of people's lived experiences, and I don't actually tell them it's my story until I get to the end of the story and I go, and I'm the author of this, and they go, holy shit, how did we not pick that up from all the clues that you were giving us And that's when the moment actually changes for them, how recent in history this is. And because my workshops are all about, not just about my story's interwoven with facts and figures and logistical points and stuff like that. And this is where I get upset when I hear people say that you have stolen someone else's work. My workshop revolves around my story and my experiences. I haven't stolen anything.
Well, and that's the thing. It's more that I think that's a reflection on them too, AJ, to be really fair, because if they've actually sat within your training,
they would see it.
Correct.
It's not a copy of anything. It's something that's actually been put together, and it's been listened to by a number of elders. I don't know how many elders have sat in my workshop. There might have been an organisation may have asked me to come and do training, and then Auntie comes and does her welcome to country, and she'll go, do you mind if I sit down? I'll only stay for an hour or so. They're there for the whole day, because they go, what you're able to do is that you are able to label things and put things in perspective, and the story that you shared about yourself wasn't to make the workshop about you, it was to show people how recent in history this stuff really is. But you also showed them the facts. You also showed them how history still impacts on people today. And there's also a heap of practical skills that if an Aboriginal person sits in front of me, how do I be that effective ally? How do I actually recognise when I do need to take off that clinician's hat and speak mob talk to the person for them to understand, and how do I do this stuff? That's what my workshops are all about. They're not about the history, and they're definitely works that, and you brought up the fact before that some of my workshops have been professionally endorsed as well. The Royal College of General Practice, the College of Midwives, the ACRM. I have to prove to them how the material was put together, who I've actually spoken to culturally, and the literature that sits behind my work in order to get my work accredited from a professional level. That's not stolen work. That's stuff that I have to prove that I've done just so I can keep those labels of this as being an accredited program.
And that's the thing that people don't, and again, it comes back to that, whether it's a knowledge base as well, of that people don't understand the accreditation process and what that actually means. And, you can't, it's like, I suppose, to put it in simpler terms, it's like a math test. Remember in high school, and sorry if this is traumatizing for a lot of people, because it's definitely traumatizing for me, is that they always want you to work your working, show us how you got to your answer.
Yes.
Show us how you got to your answer. I was horrible with that because I knew that the answer was, I seen it and I knew the answer. So I did the answer, and they were like, how did you get that? I'm like, well, I just knew it. Yeah. And I think I've done that a lot through my career. It's you walk through and you go, I know the answer, but then you've got to come back as time goes on. You go, I know the answer because the statistics stipulate this, and here's the evidence, and here's the facts. And it's similar to yourself. I suppose, AJ,
so can I answer the challenge, though, is that some of those rumours are still around today of the work that I deliver is not mine. It's work that's been taken from other organisations that I've worked at and is being represented, and that is not the case at all. Whereas an organisation, I'm not going to name them, but I've been accused of stealing their work. But what they don't realise is that 4 or 5 years before I even started working for them, I was already delivering this.
Yeah.
My story has not changed from me working with them. In fact, when I started working at this one particular organisation, they never actually had a cultural safety program in place at the time. They had a consultant working on it, and I've still got it in writing where I declared my conflict of interest in this, saying I can't participate as a staff member. They wanted Aboriginal staff involved in the creation of it when I'm running my own, and I had nothing to do with the development of that training at all. And the unit I worked in, they weren't even control of it as well. So I never even saw the package that I've been accused of actually walking off with.
But do you know what's interesting too, bros? How can your story change? Like, let's be real. Like, you're delivering. Like, don't get me wrong. Your story is very similar to many of our mob across the country, but it's also unique in its own aspects as well. So not wanting to take away from that, but at the end of the day, is that how do you? I'm trying to use a professional word because it frustrates me immensely, but where do these people get off trying to ruin the reputation of yourself? Because that is reputational damage. And what people also need to understand, as much as this is not a legal show and both of us don't hold a law degree, is that if people continue that kind of slander and defamation, is cease and desist letters can be administered like that, and they can come with some serious penalties because it's defamation.
Yep, and I have issued a few in the past. I'll be the first one to admit it. And the other thing that people don't realise is that I still have huge relationships with the Wurundjeri elders who support my work. I've shared with them the people that have actually accused me of stealing work. They know who they are because I've told them, and sometimes I've said, look, there's nothing I can do because it's very hard to get people in writing to put down this person said this, but I hear it through the grapevine that you didn't get this project because you've been accused of this, or people have rung me directly and said, hey, I've just heard that I'm concerned about this comment that what you're delivering right now may not be the work that you've actually put into place. And I go, whoa, you never asked me that question when you contracted me 2 years ago.
Yep.
What's happened in the last month since I delivered there last month that's changed this? And I always find out that somebody has actually said something that then I have to then go into a defensive mode to prove otherwise. Now the good thing is that I do keep things in writing. Most of the TOs, as I said, they can watch videos to show them, but I've also kept records that when I've actually met with the TO organisations and I've gone out and had coffee with them, and I've always thanked them in writing, and they've said, yeah, we support your endorsement. I've got all this, and I've had to send them off to community and government organisations to prove who I am, and I'm going, why do I need to do that? And for how long do I need to do that? Because as we've said, this is my 21st year of business.
And do you know what's interesting, Bros, when we talk about lateral violence and obviously keeping things in writing, but it's also the fact of, I suppose the stories will never stop, but if somebody actually attended your session, they'd know.
Yes.
And one of the things I think that's really interesting, AJ, with 21 years in business, we're celebrating a huge milestone.
That's it.
So many people... lives that you've affected and changed, not only from working under your consultancy, but let's take it back to when you were nursing and when you were in youth work and social work. Like, again, your business is a part of a very big story.
Yes.
And I think that's where I come to the part where I go, hey, let the people talk, and the consequences and karma and actions will face what they want to what they will do. But when they realise the genuine article that sits before them, but I think as well, brother, is that if people want advice around business, they should be coming to you. 21 years running your own organisation, working. And 20 plus years, I won't say how many years, but 20 plus years working in business and organisational development, in health service delivery, in justice. You've been in workforce and workplace engagement. The man, the myth, the legend. And we said that about Trav Lovett the other day, Travis Lovett in No Shame Just Truth. But you are the man, the myth, the legend, because you've done this with support from community, endorsement. And I suppose that goes to my last question of tonight, AJ. What has kept you going? What's been the motivation for the last 21 years?
One, I love it. I love the work that I do. It's so diverse. Two, I'm in a position where I trained people 20 years ago that were quite junior that are now in senior positions in government, in organisations. I worked at VATCHO for a little while as their senior educator, and that was 12, 15 years ago. Even the students I had then are now managers in ACCHOs around Victoria. They remember my training. They go, we want you to come in and deliver it to the next generation because you had such an impact on us. We can't reproduce that. We want them to hear it directly from you. And every day for me something different. We didn't talk much about, the mentoring programs I do at schools, but some days I'm in schools running cultural programs, other days I'm delivering mental health first aid, then I'm with an organisation talking about allyship, and the next day I'm with an organisation helping them with their reconciliation action plan, and then again, and the next day I'm doing mental health first aid again. Every day is so different, but I love seeing the little light bulbs that go off in people's head, making me understand that I've had some impact.
I think, AJ, just to jump back on that, you now, 21 years in business, I know we didn't talk about your mentoring program, and I really want to actually spend a full episode on the mentoring program itself, because it is so valuable, not only to workplaces, but even to young people.
Yep.
You are, I think a couple of years ago, they had a reconciliation theme, which is be brave, make change, and all that kind of stuff. But Victoria Police, and it sits with me, and that's probably because I've worked at the organisation, but be the change for good, and that's what you're doing. You're working with our young people. 13 years ago this year, 13 years ago in August, I met you, and you changed my career trajectory. Like, it was like a whirlwind. At first, I thought, who's this fella? What's he think he's talking about? I'm just going to be a fat old senior sergeant running my own country police station. One, I'm well and truly too far up my career to be doing that now. So I can't have my dream of being Tom Croydon in Blue Heelers. But I can still, I went and worked at the ACO and then went into government department roles. And I think every role that I've gone for, besides the substantive one that I sit in, I think I spoke to you about every single one of them because it was worried about burnout. And then I got the advice, ignored it, and then came back to you later and went, yeah, you were right. And I think that's the big thing, is I come to you for the advice because at the time, whether I take it then there, I'm not the only person that does that. I know that I'm not the only person that does that because I speak to people who do that now. And I know one of many people, and I don't think he'd mind being mentioned on today, but Cameron, he's a young Aboriginal social worker with a master's in social work now as well. Couldn't be prouder of him. I remember him as a young fella, just learning and wanting to guide the system. He's done that job for his own reasons, but the influence that you've had and guidance and mentoring is another reason, AJ. And I think that's another reason I could see why you'd move on, because you make change everywhere you go, and you will be remembered now, past, present, and future. Even my kids know who Uncle AJ is, for God's sake, because who you're texting, Uncle AJ, or Jill will sit down and my partner, and she'll roll over in bed and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Who are you messaging? Oh, it's AJ.
Yeah, right, we talk to each other 24 hours.
4 hours both probably. We should probably go get checked for insomnia or something. That's usually the times we're speaking, but I think, AJ, for 21 years of your organisation, of your business, not only is it something to celebrate, and we're definitely not 21 anymore, so we can't celebrate the typical 21-year-old way, but I will have my coffee up and go to cheers to you, because that's better than my coffee cup. I love that. But the fact of the matter is that we all know that you wouldn't be able to do what you do without the family support and community support you've got. So hats off to your wife, to your children, and
my team as well. I've got a team.
I know, your beautiful team, amazing team, that I happily be a part of on the peripheral, doing the work that we do together. And I will always claim to be a part of your team, even if I'm not fully employed, because we'll always be a team, I think, brother, because of the work we've done. We've got our podcast series. We've got, hopefully lots of things to come in the future. But I think overall, Braz, you have done such amazing work. I want you to keep fighting. 30 years. I want you to get to at least 30 years. Because that's when we can drink like we're 21 again. Because we'll be that old.
Are you old enough to drink at the pub by then?
I'm not sure. I hope so. I definitely can say that my facial hair the other day, somebody goes, you look a bit young to be having facial hair, and then my partner very politely told me that they had a vision impaired sign on their shirt,
Oh,
and that they were actually one of my old clients that I didn't remember. Good old horse kick.
ah.
So they were hanging it on me something shocking, and then as I came back out to say hello to them, they were like, "Gee, your wrinkles have gotten shocking, Darcy. You're getting real old." And it's like, oh, I thought I looked young. And I will say at my local IGA, if I go and get a drink, I do ask them to check my ID. I ask them to check my ID because, I need to feel young sometimes. I'm nearly 30, AJ, so.
I know. I'm getting to the stage now when they're asking to do it from my senior citizens card.
Have you got your seniors card? Like
Yeah.
your discounted meal. And speaking about quickly senior cards, my nan went and had a seniors meal, and she goes, "Oh, it was the most beautiful meal that I've had ever." And I'm like, can't I have your seniors meal? Oh, you'll get it when you're 60. And then I'm thinking, well, by my age, I'll be bloody 75, 80 as time goes on. But we could talk for hours, AJ. You have made a difference and been an ordinary Australian that makes a real difference. And I think that not only that, you've also been a local hero in many ways. But that's not just in your local community, that's across Victoria and Australia. So after 21 years in business, AJ, amazing team, you being the face of the business,
Yeah.
and
I want to thank my wife. I want to thank my wife for supporting me, my kids, and definitely my team, which includes, as I said, you and Auntie Ricky, who I do another podcast series with. Just shout out to Liz and Fiona and Yelila and Akara, Willa, and a few more people that are coming in, especially Grayson and Ash, and a few more people that we're best to put on as well. So can't do it by myself.
You can't, and that's the amazing thing, AJ, is that it's all about looking at growth business. And I think in years to come, I know that we'll sit around a fire. Probably not years to come. We need to probably do it soon. Yeah, sooner rather than later. But is to sit down and reflect and look at what you've achieved and what you're going to continue to achieve with your amazing team. No doubt being your wife and your children is a hard job as well, because you're known everywhere. They can't go and do anything without being known as your wife, your kids. So my fiance is learning very quickly that she goes to the supermarket. She now goes later because she doesn't have to see people that I know. But also, coming into a culture that is a hugging culture as well and a loving culture.
My kids have learned that anytime they're in Aboriginal community, they go, "Do you happen to know AJ?" And they go, "Yep, that's my dad." And all of a sudden they go, "I'm treated like royalty."
Yeah, well, it's funny. Hudson says to me, which is my oldest son, he goes to the same school that I went to 22 years ago. I started there, and they all go, like, I thought they might have been like, "Oh, it's Declan's nephew," which is my youngest brother. But they go, "Oh, that your Darcy's your dad. I taught your dad," and Hudson goes, "You're just so old." And not that old, but then he goes out to community and people know who he is, and I think that's the thing. If we've been able to be great dads, but also being able to really realize the times, and I think you and I have reflected, particularly across business and jobs, and this is what celebrating. This is why we're celebrating your business, is that time where you've gone, I need to be a dad, I need to be a husband, I need to stop. And I need to take stock. And I think that's the lesson of my life that I've learnt now, is that my children and my partner and my menagerie of animals that I have now that I didn't have originally comes first and foremost every time. Because at the end of the day, our family and friends are the people who are going to pick up the pieces if we're working for organisations, not inclusive of yourself, they're going to advertise my position the next day. So AJ, after celebrating 21 years of your consultancy, you've done amazing work. Thank you, and I thank you for everything you've done for me. You're an amazing human, and I love you, my brother. And just keep smashing goals. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us on YarninBlak.